Alright, today is time to do another JoJo What If. And another What If in general. Because, this is actually the ending of the whole What If request I have to do, or request videos. But I'm still taking a break from request. Yeah, I'm going to take at least 2 more months off, if you don't mind. But anyway, today we're going to be talking about what would happen if Yoshikage Kira was a Stardust Crusader. Now, I know you're going to be complaining in the comments about, oh, that makes no sense. Well, it was a requested what if. Unfortunately, I lost your comment. I apologize. But you'll know who you are if you see the video. But, we're going to talk about what Kira could have changed being a Crusader. And also, the person who requested also said for Kira to be Jotaro's older brother, so... For the sake of plot, I guess he's his older brother. Alright, so, let's talk about how would the franchise of JoJo just change had Kira and Jotaro been brothers, and had Kira been a member of the Stardust Crusaders. So the first part we talk about is Stardust Crusaders. So in this alternative timeline, Kira's going to have to find a way to exist because you're going to need Kira's dad, Yoshihiro's DNA. Well, for my opinion, I'm just going to go with the route and assume that Yoshihiro has a one-night stand with Holly. I know Holly isn't that kind of girl who would be doing that kind of stuff, but let's just say for the sake of the plot, I don't know, they got drunk or something. You can make up a story out of it, and Kira is the illegitimate son of Yoshihiro. He's Yoshihiro's bastard son. So in this timeline, Kira is Jotaro's half-brother in this timeline. That's the only logical way I could really think about it. He's the bastard son of Yoshihiro. That's kind of the point of his character. Now, as for the rest of the franchise, well, for the rest of Part 3 in particular, because 1 and 2 wouldn't change, and I have to talk about 4 through 6 later on. Well, Kira would eventually awaken a stand, like how Jotaro and the rest of the Joestars did, via Dio's and Jonathan's whole thing. So, the Joestar curse would give Kira his stand, which we'll say for the sake of this story, it's Killer Queen and Sheer Heart Attack. So, Killer Queen and Sheer Heart Attack are still going to exist for Kira, just for this timeline in particular. Now, as for how this would affect a lot of the story, well, I feel like the beginning of 3 just starts off the same. Maybe Kira's just there to see Jotaro and Abdul have their little duel, but I don't really think Kira would change too much in it. After that point of the story, I could see the rest of Part 3 more or less just going the same for a little bit. They'll still meet Kakyoin, and they'll still meet Polnareff, and I feel like they'd still get Iggy. I really don't think Kira would do much in this timeline, as Killer Queen is a very slow stand, while also being very weak. As for, arc-wise, I think, I don't see him being able to do much against Tower of Grey, since he's just very slow and wouldn't be able to do much on that one, unless when Kakyoin is positioning Tower of Grey, he positions him in a Killer Queen's range to explode. But yeah, he'd just be too slow to touch it, and Sheer Heart Attack is very much a very reckless stand at a situation like that, especially on an airplane. I'd say the same logic applies to some of the other enemies. I really can't see him doing much against the enemies on the boat, or on the sea in particular. The doll stand, I think, could probably just be a duel fight. It'd either be Polnareff and Kakyoin, or Polnareff and Kira, or maybe Jotaro and Kakyoin, or Jotaro and Kira. It just depends. Maybe even Jotaro and Polnareff work together, and Kakyoin and Kira bunk. I don't know. Between those 4, there'll be some kind of different bunking style, but I feel like Joseph and Abdul and Anne are gonna... Those rooms are gonna stay the same, so Joseph and Abdul will bunk together, and Anne's gonna have her own room. Now, as for other arcs, well, Rubber Soul, maybe Kira is imposterized instead of Kakyoin, so Kira does the Cherry Lick Redo instead of Kakyoin, which would be pretty funny, since, Kira actually did technically do that in the manga. I'm not making this up, here's proof that Kira did the Redo in the manga, but, Kira could probably actually be useful if it was legit Kira and Jotaro working together. And plus, with the bomb styling, he should be able to take out Rubber Soul pretty easily. That's one of the enemies I think Kira could actually beat from Part 3. And as for some other fights in particular, I mean, for the Holers and J-Guile stuff, I don't see Kira getting involved, and I feel like that whole thing would just be focused on Polnareff's family drama, and then Avdol and Kakyoin would still get involved in that whole stuff. I don't really think Kira would get involved in that stuff, so I don't think that arc would change. And I don't really see many of the other arcs changing either. So just some of these other arcs kind of just go the same for a bit. Except I could see Kira help out in some arcs. Like maybe in the Sun arc, maybe he can track down Arabia's Sun a little quicker. I also think he could probably just be useful in some enemy fights, as he was a very smart character. So I think he could just reveal some enemy powers, so it gives him at least something of use to do. Since his stand is just very slow and just very dangerous. So in a way, he'd basically just be Part 3's version of Fugo. But and then again, that was kind of Avdol, but like, I don't know. But however, Kira actually was. He's probably not going to do too much in Part 3. Now, as for how like the later half would go, like I don't think much would change in the grand scheme of things. Like he can help out in some enemy fights, but like that's it. Now, as for like the ending half of the story, which is like the meat and potatoes, the bread and butter, whatever you want to call it. So in this timeline, Kira just depends on who he gets separated with. And honestly speaking, I don't know if Kira could even affect the final half of the story. In my opinion, maybe he can just die in Avdol's place, theoretically. And if he can, then Avdol could probably save Iggy. Whether Kakyoin still lives or not, that one's kind of hard to say. But that's a possibility to come out of it. That's one way it could go, where Kira can just be the one who dies to Vanilla Ice, assuming that he goes with Avdol and Kakyoin, Avdol and Iggy and Polnareff, so that kind of just leads to Kira maybe having to do it. Or maybe Avdol still dies, but Kira probably wouldn't be able to do much. If anything, there's a higher chance he'd probably just get injured like how Polnareff did. If Polnareff wasn't able to really do too well, and Kira's Killer Queen is just slower than the Silver Chariot, I assume Kira would probably come out of it very fatigued as well. Iggy probably doesn't have a good chance of survival unless Kira has a good strategy. Assuming Kira's not even in that arc, I really don't think there'd be much changing. So, he's in the younger Darby, nothing would really change, and then we'd all obviously get the split up. However, whoever Kira goes with, I really couldn't see much changing. If he goes with Kakyoin and Joseph, I really don't think he could save Kakyoin. Unless he helps him by using the bombs or something. Or using Sheer Heart Attack, which could distract it. Or unless he uses Sheer Heart Attack to distract Dio with it, and maybe that's how it goes. Maybe instead he just sends out Sheer Heart Attack, and then that's how he can just reveal the world's power. But I feel like Kakyoin probably still going to have to take the blow, since I really don't know a way for Kira to do it, unfortunately. So, yeah, unfortunately Kakyoin might have to die still in this timeline. And Kira probably would just be someone who Dio would probably try to kill. So by that logic, Dio would probably become even stronger, so Jotaro might actually lose in theory. But I think with enough power, he could have someone to aid him at the end. But however, I really don't think much would change. The only change is that between Joseph or Kira, I have a feeling that only one or both were probably going to live. I don't see Kira surviving this timeline. It's because I could see his stand being pretty useful. And while I do think it could actually almost kill Dio, I feel like Dio's time stop would find a way to outdo it. Like, maybe he's actually touches something and he does lose a hand, but he's able to stop time and cut off his arm before it could happen. So he just regrows a new one and just kills Kira straight after or something. It'd probably be something like that, where Kira probably uses his intelligence to actually reveal something about that. So that's probably how it would go. Best case scenario would probably be for like Kira to try to. The only logical way Kira could probably do it is if he can sneak attack. Maybe have Polnareff's help, like when Polnareff goes for the stab to the head. When Kira's not noticing, have Polnareff put something in his clothes, so once time resumes, Dio would actually, when he touches it, like something a part of Polnareff, like the thing in his clothes, Kira can just click the bomb and Dio could explode. But that's assuming they think long ahead. I don't know if sheer heart attack could affect Dio. Probably not, since Dio is basically a dead corpse at this point, since he's undead. I really can't see Kira being able to do anything against Dio. I feel like, honestly speaking, the best case scenario to come out of this, like the only way Kira could change something for the better in this timeline would be, like the best case scenario would be for Kira to die against like Vanilla Ice and Abdul's place. Because Abdul and Iggy and Polnareff should all three be able to defeat Vanilla Ice with ease. Those three could actually make it, and maybe could save Kakyoin, maybe? So that's one way it could go. That's the best case scenario. Worst case scenario, Dio not only kills Kira and Ura, but Joseph as well, drains their blood, and that basically just leads to Dio being even more strong, and basically just being able to kill Jotaro, because he has more Joestar blood in him. So in other words, those are the two scenarios. Those are like the biggest scenarios to come out of it. But in most case scenarios, I really don't think much would change, and I personally just get the assumption Kira is just going to be an extra casualty. I really can't see him surviving Stardust Crusaders, but I think he can make it pretty far because he is a very smart character, and he has a pretty good stand that could actually protect him in a lot of ways. Now, the other part to change would be Diamond is Unbreakable. Now, whether or not any of the other Crusaders are alive or dead, I really don't know. It just depends on the story. Let's just assume for the sake of the plot we're just going to go with the OG route. So Jotaro may still have to go to Morio on his own, and if he encounters Josuke, he has to inform him about Jotaro. Honestly, the first half of Diamond is Unbreakable, or a majority of it, just goes the same. But there's a catch. Remy's probably not dead. When I mean probably, I mean most likely. Unless Kira kills Remy still, which would be pretty dark, seeing how he is a Joestar. But I really can't say exactly. Now, as for the story, I think this could actually be an arc where we get to find out about Yoshihiro and Kira's actual father. So maybe Yoshihiro can be the main villain, or I think he could just be an accomplice. Who I think for the main villain could be now. You could say Kira, but seeing how they were able to deal with him with ease, he's pretty much out of the story like in canon. So I believe the best choice of the villain would be, drumroll please, Kosaku Kawajiri, Hayato's dad. Now, this may seem odd, but I think it could theoretically work. Since it would be able, because for starters, it can tie Hayato back into the story, so we could still have Hayato in the story. And plus, we were able to have that whole thing just more or less go the same, with kind of just Hayato stalking his dad, and finding out that his dad was a serial killer this whole time, for over a decade. That's the only way I could see the story logically going on. Now, for the sake of the plot, I'm just going to assume Kosaku just has a stand that's basically just bite the dust. Probably can rewind time if wanted. It's probably one of those things where it works like bite the dust, where it has to rewind time. But I think it needs to have some kind of good physical power, or some kind of long-range power to it. I don't know, I'll let you decide in the comments how Kosaku's stand works in this timeline. But, in my honest opinion, I could see this being a very odd scenario with Kosaku. I mean, don't get me wrong, Kosaku is a pretty strong stand. I mean, like, Bite the Dust is a pretty strong ability. But for a stand alone, like having it be the main stand ability, I really don't know how that could work. You'd have to make it a little more better. You would also need to add something more to him other than just Bite the Dust. I mean, like, maybe skill him to where the World Star Platinum are, so he at least has somewhere to skill up to. Also, another change to come out of this is that the odds of Shingeki dying are very slim. So that means Shingeki might actually get to live, which is a positive. I guess, maybe. I don't know. Depends on how you feel about Shingeki. But that's just something that just came to my mind while just talking. Because I just realized that maybe he doesn't die, but that's hard to say. Hard to say how they could find Kosaku. Maybe Shingeki doesn't have to die, but they could still investigate and find Hayato. So it would still be the investigation story. And I guess Kosaku can have some kind of tie to Yoshihiro. It'd probably be one of those things where I don't know how he could connect to him, but I just assume he's able to find a way to connect to him. Maybe Kosaku is one of Dio's illegitimate sons, even though that probably wouldn't work actually. No, maybe he's actually one of Dio's henchmen's kids or something. Or maybe he has some kind of connection to Dio in the past. And since Enya also had a connection to Yoshihiro and Dio, that could lead to Yoshihiro actually meeting Kosaku and trying to help him. Maybe Yoshihiro wants revenge because his half-son got killed. His son got killed and he wants to kill Jotaro for it or something, even though that was Jotaro's brother. Also expect a more depressed Jotaro, even if all the Crusaders are alive, even if it's a timeline where all the Crusaders do live, or at least some of them, I still think the death of Kira would probably just affect him because that's his brother. Well, I mean, in this timeline, it will be his brother. So I think Jotaro might be more depressed, even if there's more Crusaders alive in this timeline. I mean, it wouldn't help because there's also a good chance Kakuin dies, so not only his brother, but one of the ones who actually was a friend to him would die, so geez, poor Jotaro, geez. But on the bright side, Abdul and Nikki have a good chance of living, maybe. But I don't really see too much changing in the overall grand scheme of things. I guess part 4, maybe overall. The first half goes the same, obviously, but I don't know how the second half would go. I think Kosaku would probably just replace Kira. Just my overall opinion. And for like 5 and 6, I really can't see much changing unless you just had more Crusaders live. If more Crusaders do live, then I guess that would probably be some good changes to come out of it. But honestly, I can't really see that happening. So overall, this timeline is very wonky, to say the least. On one hand, there's some stuff that could go on like how it does in canon. Like in part 3, it could probably just go the same. But when it comes to part 4 especially, that's where it all gets wonky. Unless you just want to do some kind of twist or reveal that Kira faked his death and was still alive, which would be a little weird. I mean, you'd have to find a way to fake his death after Dio would have killed him. But, I guess I don't really know how you could fit this timeline. If you guys have a way this timeline could work logically, just tell me in the comments. I really can't see this timeline really working too well. It's just kind of odd because I don't really know how they would work with Kira. Unless Kira was Jotaro's brother, but even then, it's a very interesting scenario, and I think there's too much to talk about with it. So, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope I did it justice, and I'll see y'all next time.